longer permit myself to purchase doormats for my home. This decision stems from a chapter in my life about 5 years ago when I resided in a bustling New York City apartment complex. During that period, I lived solo, far away from my family in Rhode Island, and as a newcomer to the area, my social circle was rather limited. My arrival at Shallow Reed was marked by me lugging my backpack and 2 large suitcases into the building. While my belongings from home were en route, I needed to ensure they were compact enough for mail delivery and light enough to avoid exorbitant fees. My family had already offered significant assistance, and as a recent college graduate aspiring to become an editor, my chosen lifestyle didn't carry the highest expectations. It was fueled more by youthful enthusiasm that could drive loved ones away while fulfilling personal ambitions. My apartment, though small, met my needs admirably. The rooms were tidy, and the utilities functioned reliably. Despite the stress, I felt content and even excited about my new life. The neighborhood, however, was undeniably tough. I had to develop a thick skin to deflect any personal insults or confrontations that came my way. Crossing the street used to be anxiety-inducing, but I had grown accustomed to it. The bus station was conveniently located down the street and served as my primary mode of transportation since I hadn't brought my car with me. About 2 years into my job at a publishing house, I found myself compelled to make a difficult decision. I had recently added a few shelves, some wall decorations, and even a welcoming doormat to the entrance of my apartment. The mat was a tufted one with a rainbow design and the word "welcome" in white lettering, something sweet, subtly expressing queer pride and creating a homely atmosphere. The incident in question unfolded much like any other day. I woke up, went to work, and returned home without any plans to visit a club or a bar that night. Although I enjoyed the city's nightlife and occasionally had people over, they rarely stuck around. I adopted a rather defensive stance toward my living situation. There had been occasions when I had to fend off persistent solicitors. I always kept my door securely locked, taking no chances, especially as I resided on the first floor. That particular evening, I was feeling rather irked. The tenant above me was playing loud music, and the couple next door seemed to be enjoying their relationship a bit too enthusiastically. It was slightly past 8 p.m., and I was engrossed in a television show. While I wasn't a big TV watcher, I relied more on reading news on my phone and gathering office gossip at work. The nightly news, however, had become a habit, a holdover from my parents' influence. Staying informed about literary news mattered more to me than local events. Suddenly, I detected the faintest sound of a knock. I perked up in my seat on the couch, but didn't mute the show I was watching. It could have been anything. A knock sounded again, this time with greater assurance and confidence. My heart began to race, panic setting in. Who could be knocking on my door at this hour? The police? Perhaps a neighbor? I approached my door stealthily, tiptoeing to peer through the peephole. The individual stood before me, gaze fixed upon the floor, clad in a crimson jacket with the hood concealing their visage. Their stature appeared diminutive, perhaps that of a child. Anxious shuffling marked their anticipation of my response. I cleared my throat, adopting a more authoritative tone, considering they had come knocking at my door. "Hello, who's there?" Slowly the person turned toward the door, revealing tear-streaked cheeks on the young girl. I hesitated for only an instant before swinging the door open. She couldn't have been more than 9 years old, and my primary concern shifted from myself to her. "Hello, little one. Are you looking for someone? Is there someone with you?" "I can't find my mom," she whimpered, her eyes still damp. Her simple red raincoat bore the signs of being drenched by the rain outside. I glanced down the hallway in both directions, finding no one else present. Kneeling to meet her eye level, I, not particularly imposing in stature, nevertheless loomed over her. "When did you last see her?" "She was here, but then she was gone," she replied, her words muffled by sobs. "It's all right, we'll find her. Do you know a phone number we can call?" She nodded and wiped her face once more. "Come inside and we'll get you dried off." Gently, I extended my hand, which she accepted after a moment's hesitation. She brushed her shoes on my welcome mat, and when she looked up, her eyes widened as they roamed around my apartment. At the time, it didn't particularly embarrass me, but my home wasn't exactly child-friendly. My collection of assorted alcohol bottles and various decorative items scattered about were more geared towards adults. Leading her to the living room, I asked if I could hang her raincoat on the doorknob outside the apartment. I doubted anyone in my building would pilfer a child's raincoat, and anyone who knew her would recognize it. Hurriedly, I retrieved a towel from my bathroom. She stood in the center of the living room, fixated on the TV. After asking, I handed her the towel and reached for my phone. "Here you go. I'm Derek. Can I know your name?" "I'm Cho. I'm calling my mom," she replied in her soft voice. I offered her my phone, which she eagerly grabbed, dialing the numbers. As the dial tone rang, she turned her back to me. I retreated to the kitchen to give her some privacy, a small marble island separating the two rooms. While pouring her a glass of water, I kept an eye on her. After a few moments, she began speaking in a language I recognized as Asian but couldn't understand. She turned to me as I handed her the water. "What is this place?" she inquired. "I'm in Unit 5 on the first floor at Shallow Reed Apartments," I clarified. She resumed her conversation on the phone, casting occasional glances around the room as if wary of eavesdroppers. Our eyes briefly met, and she quickly averted her gaze. I felt a touch awkward standing there, despite knowing the young girl posed no threat to me. A few moments later, Cho handed me my phone and simply stated, "She'll be here soon," her eyes fixed on the floor. I contemplated reporting the situation to the police. While her mother was on her way, the question lingered. Why had she gone missing in the first place? "Why did you knock on my door instead of Unit 1, I mean the first door in the hall?" I inquired. "Your carpet," Cho responded. Confused, I wondered what she meant by that. "There's a rainbow. No one else had a rainbow," she explained matter-of-factly. It dawned on me that she was referring to my doormat. Shallow Reed's community wasn't the most inclusive, but I hadn't anticipated that displaying a rainbow on my mat would lead a child to my door. Setting that aside, I asked another question. "How did you and your mom get separated?" Cho remained silent, her gaze fixed on the ground. Her attention momentarily shifted to my TV when the news theme began to play. "Can you change this, please?" she requested. It struck me as an unexpected request, but then again, I couldn't imagine the news being a popular choice for a child's entertainment. Retrieving the remote from where it lay on the couch's armrest, I switched to a children's show featuring a blue heeler family. It seemed like a better option than the evening news. Cho didn't seem particularly inclined to engage in conversation anyway. I silently hoped she would leave soon. About 5 minutes later, a hurried knock echoed through the apartment. I promptly stood up from my spot at the other end of the couch, rushed to the door, and swung it open. There stood a woman clutching a red raincoat in her hands. Unlike Cho, she had long black hair and a slight hunch in her posture. She appeared younger than one would expect for someone with a hunched back, perhaps in her 30s or 40s. Behind me, Cho cried out, "Mama!" I swiftly sidestepped as the woman glided past me and into my home, leaving the door ajar with the expectation that they would soon depart. The mother initiated a conversation with Cho in the same language I had heard over the phone. She cradled her daughter's face in her hands and carefully inspected the child. "She arrived maybe 10 minutes ago. She hasn't said much," I interjected, but the mother gave no indication of whether she had heard me or not. "Would you mind if we use your restroom? She has a cut on her arm that I want to clean," the mother requested. "Oh, certainly. It's down the hall and to the left. The first aid kit is in the closet." I gestured in the direction they needed to go. My bedroom was directly across from it. As they made their way to the bathroom, the mother appeared to cast a more curious gaze around my apartment than I found comfortable. By this point, they had seen every corner of my home. I didn't recall spotting any injuries on the child initially, but I hadn't conducted a thorough examination either. While they were in the bathroom, I attempted to change the TV channel but couldn't locate the remote. I found this rather peculiar, as I had left it in the same spot as before. One advantage of the modern age is the digital convenience of everything, so I opened the TV app on my phone and made the switch from there. When I tuned back to the news, I was confronted with footage of a raging house fire that had occurred earlier in the day. I hadn't missed any of the evening news coverage. I could hear them engaged in an intense whispering conversation in the bathroom, which wasn't surprising. I assumed the mother was giving her child an earful, though I had the impression that inadequate adult supervision was the root cause, not the child's actions. Nevertheless, I chose not to intervene. And in our final update of the evening, we have a local alert from the police department. Authorities are on the lookout for a group of individuals wanted for home invasion and murder. On the screen, they displayed several images of men who all appeared rather nondescript, with none particularly standing out. They all wore black masks and had slim figures. These criminals had been breaking into homes, stealing electronics, jewelry, and easily sellable items. It was what followed that made my stomach churn. In their most recent attack, the homeowners had a camera system installed that captured the entire incident on film. On the TV screen, an individual stood there, clad in a bright red raincoat. The recording included both audio and subtitles. "I can't find my mom." I could feel the blood draining from my face. I hurriedly lowered the TV volume, casting a cautious glance behind me to ensure no one was lurking there. The bathroom light was still on, but the whispering had ceased. I turned my attention back to the screen, and they had fast-forwarded the clip, revealing the same woman currently in my bathroom. My fingers trembled as I dialed 911, shutting off the TV and keeping a vigilant eye on the bathroom while rushing towards the front door. As I reached for the door handle, a heavy knock resounded against it. I froze in place, my finger hovering over the call button. From the bathroom, I heard the woman call out, "That must be my brother. He's our ride home. Could you let him know we'll be right out?" "Of course, let me just turn off the oven," I replied, my panic mounting. Slowly, I locked the door, even grabbing some mail to improvise a makeshift doorstop. As I slid it beneath the door, the person outside knocked again. I jumped back and tiptoed to my bedroom. Another pounding at the door followed. Holding my breath, I passed the bathroom. Neither the girl nor the woman made a sound. I locked my bedroom door and dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? My house is being broken into. It's the people from... My words were abruptly cut off by the sound of a violent slam as they forcefully breached the front door. "They've made it into my home," I whispered, stepping away from the door. "Sir, what is your location?" Shouts echoed from the intruders who had just smashed their way in, wreaking havoc on my belongings and who knows what else. I realized that my door wouldn't hold long enough for the police to arrive. I had to take action immediately. Without a second thought, I dashed towards the only window in my room. Meanwhile, I heard a woman crying, her voice trembling as she yelled through the door, pleading for help. She warned that they would harm her and her child if I didn't intervene. I swiftly opened the window, pushing the screen out of its frame. The walls shook as someone continued to pound on my bedroom door. As I began to step out of the window, a strong hand suddenly grabbed my shirt collar from outside, catching me off guard. I dropped my phone as I was forcefully pushed to the ground. The 911 operator's voice echoed faintly through the fallen phone, shattering against the small rocks lining my building. Hands tightened around my throat before I could even react, and the person on top of me used all their weight to pin me down, straddling my hips. I struggled within their relentless grip, panic taking over. I'll never forget the chilling look in their eyes, a complete disregard for humanity. I could see it in their eyes even now. The sinister smile stretched across their lips. My own reflection in the darkness of their eyes haunted me. I desperately tried to push away their arms, claw at their face. My head throbbed, and my vision dimmed rapidly. I couldn't hear them, but I could see them leaning closer to my face, saliva splattering my cheeks as they laughed inches from my horrified gaze. With my last ounce of strength, I reached for the ground beneath me and aimed for those abyssal, soulless eyes. Blood splattered across my face before their laughter twisted into agonized screams. As the assailant clutched their eye, or what remained of it, I managed to wriggle free as they dislodged more than just the small rock. I mustered the strength to break away from the man who had been trailing me and bolted. My legs carried me as swiftly as they could, and I dared not glance back. Racing across the street, I screamed at the top of my lungs, desperate for assistance. Several businesses lined the street, including a brightly lit pizza joint. Without hesitation, I lunged at their door, wrenching it open. My trembling hands found the lock for the glass door, and I secured it. The restaurant's staff, startled and defensive, began shouting at me. I turned to face them, and their aggression softened when they noticed the dark crimson handprints staining my neck. From that moment on, everything seemed like a whirlwind of motion. The pizza place made an urgent call to the police, and I provided them with as much information as I could. It took a few tense minutes for the police cars to arrive, minutes during which I contemplated whether I should have gone out of my window instead. By the time the police reached my apartment, there was no sign of anyone left inside. Even with the officers accompanying me, I hesitated to enter. They dispatched a team to collect samples and document the scene meticulously. My once orderly apartment was now a chaotic mess, with remnants of destruction scattered throughout. The police escorted me to the station to draft a formal report. I recounted the encounter with Cho and the mysterious woman who had come to my door. Hours later, they provided an update. They had discovered a man matching the description I had given, missing an eye and discarded in a dumpster just 20 minutes from my residence. Despite spending a week in a hotel and another week with a coworker, there was no sign of the individuals who had attacked me. The police, unfortunately, were not much help without any concrete leads. I questioned why I had been targeted, and they inquired about my firearm ownership, even though they should have known the answer. I affirmed that I did not own one. They explained that the other homes targeted by the assailants shared a commonality. They all lacked firearms and were seemingly vulnerable. One family had close ties to a local church, another was a group of college students in an apartment, and the last, whose security cameras captured footage of the mysterious woman, were not yet citizens of the United States. It was clear that none of us would have possessed guns or rejected a child in need. We had all been singled out as easy targets. The police couldn't determine how much the group knew about us until they apprehended the culprits, but they seemed to know enough about me. I eventually relocated, took self-defense classes, and purchased a handgun that I only touched once a year when I went to the shooting range. Every knock at the door sent my heart racing, but I vowed to be prepared if they ever returned. At least that's what I believed until today, when I returned home and found a red raincoat hanging on my doorknob.